All right, let's check in on some election news now in Congress at 7:30. Tomorrow marks the upcoming primary to succeed the seat of Lindsey Graham. This is a big one. Here to recap recent developments and preview what's to come, we're joined once again by Daily Mail reporter Victoria Churchill. Hi, Victoria. Good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Thanks so much for having me back.
So there's a number of people who are in line for this, who are going to be fighting for this particular seat, kind of all over the place when it comes to political background. What are you watching?
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, the woman to watch in this race is Darlene Graham Nardone. She is the late Lindsey Graham's sister. She was, basically handpicked by President Trump and then formerly appointed by South Carolina's Governor Henry McMaster to fill the seat. I think many expected her to fill the seat just on an interim basis through the remainder of Graham's current term, which goes until January of next year. But she decided to throw her hat in the ring and jump in the race. And, so she is one of the names on the ballot. We've also got folks like Congressman Ralph Norman. He was already planning to leave Congress at the end of this year. He had previously been in the pretty crowded field that they saw down there in South Carolina in the gubernatorial race. He was unsuccessful in that race. And so, he is already going, putting himself up for another race again, statewide, which, again, is interesting seeing that as he did not fare super well on a statewide primary ticket just a few months ago in the middle of June. And then we've also got folks like Congressman Russell Fry. He is somebody that would represent kind of a newer generation. He is somebody who is of a little bit more concern just because of internal, kind of politics and dealings within the Republican Party, because he is currently running for re-election to his U.S. House seat. And so if he was to win the Senate primary, they would either have to super last minute fill somebody for that House seat, which would be kind of difficult because that primary already happened, at the same time as that governor's primary back in the middle of June. And so, when Republicans are looking at very slim margins, both in the House right now and trying to maintain those, with kind of full steam ahead from Democrats in all these battleground seats all across the country, that is something that could cause some internal problems within the GOP if they were to retain the majority after November, but have his seat either go for a special election or have somebody backfill that nomination. So lots of things to be watching there in that race. So this is the special primary election. I think it's pretty widely expected that this will go to a runoff, so that would happen in another couple weeks. And folks are already planning debates for a runoff, so I think that does seem to be the expectation there. So then, that would be kind of just like what we saw in that gubernatorial race where there was a primary. Nobody, got either. Basically nobody got that nomination that day. So then the top two would go to that runoff, and then it would be determined who would face off in November for the general election.
So big picture here, and obviously they're trying to fill a Senate seat, and you just talked about some of the leading candidates, everything from current House members to former governors to the sister of the former senator. One, does anybody have an advantage at this point? And two, do you see whomever is elected just being a continuation of what Lindsey Graham was able to do for South Carolina? I know it's a primary, but is there any chance that the Democratic candidate could win in South Carolina?
I mean, I would say it's probably less likely for the Democrat candidate to win in South Carolina. I was down there reporting on the governor's race just a few weeks ago, in between their primary and runoff. And so, it was interesting. Of course, I think Darlene is at least the front runner just because she has a president's endorsement. He does pull quite a significant section of the GOP base to his preferred candidate. But also, like we saw in that governor's race, which again, I think is a very interesting one to look at because, it is a statewide race, just like this one for the Senate seat. His endorsement is not just enough to get somebody through the primary. And so his candidate made the top two, and then he ended up coming in with a last minute double endorsement in the runoff, probably because he didn't want to kind of have another loss under his belt for an endorsed candidate. So, he's lost a few of those. And, I was also talking to some supporters of the candidate that the president ended up endorsing, again, kind of last minute. He actually endorsed them like, I think the day after I talked to some of his supporters, and, they were like, we're Trump people, we love Trump, but maybe he doesn't always know exactly what our thoughts here are on the ground in South Carolina. And, of course, the voter being a Republican, she was like, he's busy, he has other priorities, he's got wars and things going on. But, that was an interesting insight I think I got from a voter on the ground there. So I think there's definitely lots of lessons to take into the Senate race.
And it's a lot to digest for the voters in South Carolina in a relatively short amount of time. But we will find out more about that primary vote tomorrow. Victoria, it's always a pleasure. Daily Mail reporter Victoria Churchill. You can follow her work with the Daily Mail where you on the site you see there on your screen. Thanks, Victoria. Always a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Steve.